All right. So, matter of fact, you know, select here. This is Psalms 50 and 19. Thou givest thou mouth to evil, and thy tongue frameth deceit. I'd like to start off by saying Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai, Kol Haloyam La Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachakodash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who rule well. Blessings and salutations to the hopeful elect that scattered abroad, the Akim and the Akwat that's listening in. Yahweh Ratazah, Lord willing that the lesson is edifying. It's the brother Shawab Amawan back at you with another lesson. And going into the title, all right, the Caucasians, right? The Caucasian is an Edomite, all right, not an Israelite, okay? The Caucasian is an Edomite, all right, and not a Caucasian, all right? And this is inspiration comes from a video that I got on Instagram, all right, and like I just read in Psalms 50, 19, all right, thou givest thy mouth to evil and thy tongue frameth deceit, because that's what this devil's about, all right? He loved to frame deceit with his mouth, okay? He loved to speak lies, as the scriptures tell you in John 8 and 44, right? That he is the father of it, all right? When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh a lie. Let's grab that real quick, all right? And he is the father of it. This is John, all right? And this was speaking about our people that want to be in the lust of their father, the devil, okay? This is 8 and 44 in John, and it says, ye are of your father, the devil, and the lust of your father you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. All right. And the scriptures also tell you that the wicked is estranged from the womb. As soon as they come out being born, right, they speak lies. Okay. So everything that comes out of this damn devil's mouth is a damn lie. All right. And ultimately, he does these things to hide himself. All right. And the scriptures tell you there is nothing that is hid that shall not come to the light. All right. Let's grab that. This is Luke 2 and selecting that 2, 12 and 2. For there is nothing covered that shall not be revealed, neither hid that shall not be known. Therefore, whatsoever ye have spoken in darkness shall be heard in the lights, and that which ye have spoken in the ears and closets shall be proclaimed upon the housetops. All right. So there's nothing that's going to be hid, all right, that is not going to be made manifest and come to the light through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai. And this is why this devil hates us, man, because he is being consumed with the spirit of his mouth. All right. The spirit of his mouth is the mouth of the prophets. You see, the Lord puts the spirit on us to make Esau bare that he can no longer hide himself, as the scriptures say. You see? So with that being said, let me grab this video. All right, and I'm pretty sure Esau right now with the title, he probably shadow banning me right now from everybody. All right, because I've done lessons like this in the past, and he always does that. All right, but this is real quick. I gotta go back into it, looking for it.
You call a Caucasian. You are a Caucasian. You are also an Israelite. Why are you called a Caucasian? You are a Caucasian. You are also an Israelite, according to Noah Webster in the Holy Bible. The Webster Encyclopedia of Dictionaries, copyright. Why are you called a Caucasian? You are a Caucasian. You are also an Israelite, according to Noah Webster in the Holy Bible. The Webster Encyclopedia of Dictionaries, copyright 1958, by the Literary Press, page 64, says, quote-unquote, Caucasian pertains to the white race originating from the Caucasus Mountains near the Black Sea. The Holy Bible states that the house of Israel would be scattered north of the river Euphrates. You can find it in 1 Kings 14:15. This promise was fulfilled when, in 721 BC, all 10 tribes were taken into captivity and driven by the Assyrians into the Caucasus Mountains, located between the Caspian and Black Sea. 2 Kings 17:6, 2 Kings 18:9 through 11. Hosea the prophet in his book, chapter 2, verse 6 says, quote, I will hedge up thy way with thy thorns and make a wall that she shall not find her paths. In this way, Yahweh was making it clear that the tribes of Israel were not to return to Palestine. As Jacob Israel left the mountains and migrated into Europe and finally to North America, they became known as the race of Caucasians. And that's what we are. And this is our history. And this is what we...
Yeah, so that's all a lie right there. All right, they're not the Caucasians. All right, they are the biblical Edomites, okay, and always will be, and they cannot run away from that. All right, as much as they try to hide it, all right, the Lord is always going to expose it through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai. All right, so this was all dogma what he was reading right there. All right, that they come from the Caucasus Mountains. Anything like that was just straight dogma. All right, let's grab this. All right, because the original birthplace of Esau, okay, can be found real quick. And this is Genesis 38, I believe it is, or 36. Let me try 36 first. It was 36. So it says, now these are the generations of Esau, who is Edom. Okay. Now, before I go on with that, all right, we know through the spirit that it's the so-called white man, but I have a book here called Who is Esau Edom? All right, written by Charles A. Wiseman, which is an Edomite himself. All right. And I believe he is he is what you will call a Jewish man, okay? A roundabout Jew, right? So when you go into the first page, the first chapter, which is on page 5, it says, Life and history of Esau. Esau was the firstborn of Isaac, and thus was the heir to the birthright derived from the direct racial lineage of Adam to Noah to Abraham. Thus, Esau was racially an Edomite and a Semite and a Hebrew, the racial stock of the white race. You see? So now I can go back on and I'll grab a little bit more from that book. All right, but let me just prove this point. This is Genesis 36. And now that we have a clue of who is Esau Edom, right? He is from the racial stock of the white race. It says, now these are the generations of Esau, who is Edom. Okay, you jump down to 8. It says, thus dwelt Esau in Mount Seir. Esau is Edom. Okay, now let's see what the word dwelt means. Okay, let me see if it gives you saying that that's the birthplace. Okay, dwelt goes into the word. All right, Yahushua, Wayashab, right? Wayashab. It goes into to dwell, okay? Remain, okay? Place, to set place, all right? To cause cities to be inhabited, okay? when you go into the word dwell, all right, just want to see what it says. Live in or at a specific place. Okay. Groups of people still dwell in these caves, and that's spiritual. Did they that they even use that sentence for the word dwell? All right. Groups of people still dwell in these caves, okay, because that's where he came from, the caves, the mountains, all right, Mount Seir, okay. I just want to see what else it says here. uh yeah, Old English, dwelling means to tarry, okay, remain in a place, all right. Let me see what the word etymology of dwelt, all right.
Dwelt comes from the Old English word dwellen, meaning to delay or hinder. However, its meaning changed in Middle English, influenced by Old Norse, to mean to live or reside, and became the common past tense form alongside dwelled.
Exactly, to live or reside. I was hoping it would say the original birthplace of somewhere. All right, but hey, that's close enough. All right, to live and reside. Okay, so was their normal place. All right, that they dwelt in. As a matter of fact, when you go back into this book, all right, you go down a little bit. I'm not going to read a lot, the whole thing, but it says Esau and the Edomites dwelt in Mount Seir, which Yahweh gave to Esau for a possession. This land was also known as Idumea, and the land of Edom. Mount Seir lies south of the Dead Sea, stretching south to its seaport at Elath, all right, and included the ravine known as Petra, because that's what it will be named today. It will be named Petra, you see. So the word Caucasian that they got, all right, is just another way for them to hide themselves, because from Petra they moved on to the Greeks, you see, and then they conquered the Greeks just like they conquered the Romans, all right. And when they conquered these places, right, they called themselves those places. They called themselves Greeks. They called themselves Romans, you see. So it's all to hide themselves, because just like in 1681 when they called themselves white, you see, it was all made for them to hide themselves from who their true identity is, which is the biblical Edomites, and they will always remain the biblical Edomites. All right, the scriptures tell you, all right, and Ecclesiastes 4. Let me get that real quick. 4:16. It says, "There is no end of all the people, even of all that have been before them. They also that come after shall not rejoice in him. Surely this also is vanity and vexation of spirit." So the point is, there is no end of all people. Okay, and you have to understand, all right, that the Lord has set them up always to be, all right, the biblical Edomites. Okay, so there's no way you can hide yourself, man. All right. The Lord said, "I will make Esau bare that he can no longer hide himself." You see, we all come from the descendants of Noah, right? So the Noah had his three sons. He had Shem, Japheth, and Ham. All right. And we come from those three people, man. All right. There's only 18 nations according to the Bible. All right. And you come from one of those. So there is no end of all people. Okay. And Esau, all right, came from Shem. All right. That's why he's our evil twin brother. You see? But let's continue on real quick. All right. Now that we know that. So let me read a couple more pieces in here. All right. And I'll pretty much close it out because I ain't going to spend too much time on this. All right. Give me 1 second. Just want to make straight points instead of reading and going on and rambling. All right. It says the origin of the Jews. I'll read a little bit of this. Okay. Yeah. This says, the Jews of today fall within two main types, the Sephardic Jew and the Ashkenazi Jew. The Sephardim are also known as Spanish Jews and constitute about 5% of the Jews in the world. The Ashkenazim are the East European Jews, which were found in Poland, Russia, Germany, and Western Asia, okay? Which Europe always laid in Asia, all right? Because Europe was filled with was filled with dark-skinned people, man, at the end of the day, all right? And where Petra is today, okay, that's basically where the Levant is, all right? So you know where Mount Seir was originally at, okay? It says this group of Jews make up 90% of the so-called Jews in the world today, all right? Many reference and historical sources have equal hold on, let me see how you say this word. I don't want to mess up the word, all right? Let's just say there you go. This is
unequivocally.
There you go. I didn't want to say it all messed up. Unequivocally identified that the bulk of the Ashkenazi Jews were derived from a people known as the Khazars, right? The Khazars. The original Jewish Encyclopedia of 1905 revealed that the main stock of the Jews came from this Asiatic people known as the Khazars, right? Khazars, a people of Turkish origin whose life and history are interwoven with the very beginnings of the history of the Jews of Russia. Historical evidence points to the region of the Urals as the home of the Khazars. Okay, it says the Khazars were nomadic people who had no traces of Hebraic culture. They had been following a pagan and sex-oriented religion until they had officially embraced Judaism in 740 AD. While rejecting Christianity and Mohammedanism, the Jewish author and historian Arthur Koestler also concludes that the majority of East European Jews and hence of world Jewry is of Khazar and not of Semitic origin. In the beginning of his book, he states, the large majority of surviving Jews in the world is the Eastern European, okay, and thus perhaps mainly of Khazar origin. If so, this would mean that their ancestors came not from the Jordan, but from the Volga, not from Canaan, but from the Caucasus, all right? And again, they are not from the Caucasus Mountains, man. They are from Mount Seir, okay? Why they say this? Who knows? Okay, now does the Caucasus Mountains exist? Absolutely. All right. And it says, and that genetically they are more closely related to the Hun, Igor, and Magyar tribes than to the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay. It says Koestler then devotes the remainder of his 255-page book to prove his premise. For instance, a record of a letter by Khazar king shows that he traced his people to Noah's son Japhet Nashem and to Japhet's grandson Togmar, an ancestor of Turkish tribes. Okay, again, that's a lie because they go back to being Shem, all right? But they were not chosen, okay? And Isaac was thy seed, okay? So Jacob was the one that was chosen, okay? So let's just go down to, because I ain't going to read too much into it, like I said. This is going into a whole bunch of yeah, let's jump right here to this point. It says the Sier Mountains are none other than the original land of Esau Edom. You see, the original land of Esau Edom. Thus dwelt Esau and Mount Seir. Esau is Edom. Genesis 36:8, what we just read. Seir was a mountain range south of the Dead Sea and was also known as the land of Edom. The Seir Mountains were the home of the Edomites for nearly a millennium. Thus, it should be no surprise that migrants from that land would recall the name of their original homeland. If the Khazars, all right, did originally dwell near the Sier mountains, then the Khazars, and thus, see, that's probably why they bringing it out like that, because the Khazars, all right, were around where that the Caucasus mountains were, you see, which is two different types of they the same people, okay, but just different types of people that were scattered at the end of the day. It says, if the Khazars did originally dwell near the Sier mountains, then the Khazars, and thus world Jewry, are racially of Edomite stock. You see, because they had, remember when we first read, it said you have Sephardic Jews, right? What was it? It said it was Sephardic Jews and what was the other one? Give me 1 second. Sephardic Jews and Ashkenazi Jews. That's why. You see, you had two different types. Okay, in the Ashkenazi, all right, the Ashkenazian ones came from Poland, Russia, Germany. All right, so that's where the Caucasus Mountains are. You see, around that Russian, around the Russia area. You see, so that's why they'll come out and say the Caucasus Mountains, but that's not where their original birthplace was, man. Their original birthplace was Mount Sier, which is known as Petra today, also known as Salah. When you read it in the scriptures, all right, you'll see that the word Salah also comes up. All right. As a matter of fact, when you go into the chat, all right, and you put in, let's grab that real quick. All right. When exactly was Mount Sier name changed to Petra? Right. It says the Greek name Petra replaced the biblical name Salah or Mount Sier gradually, not at a single specific date. The change was a natural linguistic shift as the city's Greek name, meaning rock, you see, and that's spiritual. Why? Because they came from the clefts of the rocks, as the scriptures tell you. All right, Obadiah. All right, let's just grab that real quick. All right, because this whole chapter Obadiah is about Esau, Edom. Okay. Obadiah 1, it says, Edom will be humbled. Okay. The vision of Obadiah does say the Lord Yahweh concerning Edom. We have heard a rumor from the Lord Yahweh, and an ambassador is sent among the heathen. Arise ye and let us rise up against her in battle. Behold, I have made thee small among the heathen, thou art greatly despised. The pride of thine heart has deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock. You see, whose habitation is high, who saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? Though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and though thy set though thou set thy nest in the stars, thence will I bring thee down, saith the Lord Yahweh. Okay. And they've always represented that eagle. Okay. When you go into the chat GPT again, okay, and you put that, all right, you put in was the eagle of representation of Petra. It says, yes, the eagle, yes, eagles, hold on. Yes, eagles are carved on the structures in Petra, notably on the Ashkenazi, you see, Ashkenaz, the treasury, okay, where four eagles at the top. All right, at the top symbolize souls being carved to the afterlife. You see, so even when you go into Petra today, all right, where Mount Sier was, you will find actual carvings, all right, of the eagle, all right, showing you that this devil, all right, was always a representation with that eagle. All right, so the Lord said, though thy what did he say? Let's grab it again. Okay, back in Obadiah. He said, though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, you see, and though thou set thy nest among the stars, thence will I bring thee down, saith the Lord Yahweh. All right. And see, when they conquered the Greeks and then they called themselves Greeks, they had the same symbol. when they conquered the Romans, right? And they called themselves Romans. They had the same exact eagle, you see? And always what they did was they tried to hide themselves by naming themselves different types of cultures, different types of people, all right? Because that's what that devil will always be doing, man. And as a matter of fact, to grab that, all right, let's grab that in this book also again. Who is Esau Edom? All right, once again, great book to read. All right, let me just get straight to that point, and I can pretty much close it out. When you go to page 23, all right, it says, give me 1 second. Let's take it from 22, and I'm going to read a little bit, and then I'll close it out. It says, Yahweh's hatred of Edom is not a temporary thing, but is a perpetual. Okay, it is perpetual. The same way he has a perpetual hatred for us, the Lord has a perpetual hatred with him. All right. He said he will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. Okay, which the Amalekites are also known as Edomites. Okay, it says, as a matter of fact, above that, it even says it. It says, among Esau's brethren were the Amalekites, which were descended from one of Esau's grandsons. Okay, it was these Edomite kingsmen whom Yahweh had sworn war against from generation to generation. Okay, Yahweh's hatred of Edom is not a temporary thing, but is perpetual. The doctrine that Yahweh loves everyone does not stand up in the light of what the Bible has to say regarding Yahweh's merciless position towards the race of people called Edom. Although the churches have tried to alter Yahweh's true nature, we find that throughout the Bible, Yahweh's position towards Esau, Edom does not change. And the Lord says that, all right, I changed not, you see. So the Lord, all right, it's not going to change just because your unbelief, all right. The Lord said, Yahweh shot today, Yahweh shot tomorrow, Yahweh shot yesterday, right? Roughly paraphrasing it. So nothing is going to change that the Lord has written, okay? It says, let's jump down. It says, therefore, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, surely in the fire of my jealousy have I spoken against the residue of the heathen and against all Idumea, okay? So when it came to the time of the Greeks, that's what they were calling it, right? Idumea. It says, shall I not in this day say the Lord Yahweh even destroy the wise men out of Edom and the understanding out of the mount of Esau? Thus says the Lord Yahweh, behold, O Mount Seir, I am against you and will stretch out my hand against you. There is not one favorable or positive statement in the Bible in relation to Esau, Edom. But how does this adverse relationship which Yahweh has towards Esau, Edom help us to identify who this character is in the world today? To help us answer this, we have to put ourselves into the role which Esau has been assigned in Yahweh's script. If Yahweh hated you and your ancestors, how would you react and what would you do? By natural reaction, you would be against Yahweh and his people and try to prevent them from finding out you are Esau. And that's what he does today. He always tries to hide himself and his true identity. Okay. But no matter what, remember, he was a vagabond. Okay. He was a vagabond and what was the other one? A fugitive. Okay, a vagabond is someone that is a wanderer, someone that has no culture, that has no home, you see, which he never had a culture, he never had a home. Okay, that's why the Lord put him as the birthplace of Mount Seir. That ain't a home, living in the mountains, you see. And he was always a fugitive, one that runs from persecution, you see. That's why he's been a wanderer. Okay, and he's always been hiding and running. Okay, so it says who is it says his people. By natural reaction, you would be against Yahweh and his people and try to prevent them from finding out who you are as Esau. The one power, the one Yahweh is against, knowing that if Yahweh is against something, so will his followers. And that's why we're against him to this day. Okay. And he's mad that the fact that we woke up to this truth. Okay. It says, who is it that tries to conceal their identity as Edom? The one that is hated by Yahweh, by claiming to be Israel, the one loved by Yahweh. Only one group of people reacts as though Yahweh has a hatred for them. That is the Jews. You see, the modern day Jews, okay, which they are Jewish around about, okay, because they know damn well they ain't the true people. All right. The true Jew is consisted of Benjamin, Levi, and Judah, okay, which is the southern kingdom. You so-called blacks, okay, you Haitians, okay, and you Benjamites going into you Jamaican and West Indies, okay. It says, why do you suppose the Jews form organizations such as an anti-defamation league to monitor and combat hate and to identify hate groups? Would not Esau want to do this? Why is it that it is predominantly Jews who promote the anti-hate laws? Of course, because they're not the real ones. You see, they have to try to keep their hidden they got to keep themselves from being known who they are. Okay, so they don't want to be exposed, but no matter how much they try, they continually keep being exposed by Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai, you see, through the spirit of his mouth, okay, which is what? The prophets, all right? It says, and other hate crime, all right, let's read that again. Why is it that it is predominantly Jews who promote the anti-hate laws and other hate crime legislation? If you were Esau Edom, would you not do the same? An Edomite would also want to infiltrate churches, okay? And that's what he does. And seminaries, all right, to get Yahweh's people to believe that there is no God of hate, only a God of love and mercy. And you see, this is why our people today, all right, are so caught up in the church, into Christianity and Catholicism. You see, this is why when they hear us bringing out that these heathens ain't gonna be saved and that Esau, Edom, and the rest of these nations are going into captivity, they're like, no way, God can't do that. God is all about peace, because this devil has brainwashed you to believe, all right, he has brainwashed the masses to believe that there is no perfect balance with the Lord. If there's love, there's hate. If there's up, there's down. If there's left, there's right. So the Lord is a perfect balance. A false balance is an abomination to the Lord, man. So the Lord loves his people, and then he hates a particular people. That's why the Lord said in Romans 9, I have loved Jacob, I have hated Esau. You see, and will always hate Esau. See, the Lord created Esau just to destroy him. Okay, the Lord is a perfect balance, so he had to create, you know, the righteous, he had to create the wicked. All right, let's grab that real quick, and I'll pretty much close it out. All right, this is Ecclesiasticus 33 and 11. In much knowledge, the Lord Yahweh Shai has divided them and made their ways diverse. Some of them has he blessed and exalted, and some of them has he sanctified and set near himself. And that's the nation of Israel. You see, we were blessed, okay, by Yahweh, by Hashem Yahweh Shai. And we have been brought near, okay, and sanctified to himself, right? But some of them has he cursed and brought low and turned out of their places. And he has cursed Esau, you see, forever, okay? Even going back to the garden, when that serpent, right, that sly, treacherous man that fed the philosophy to Eve, all right, what did he say? He said he would be cursed all the days of his life, okay? And that he will be on his belly in the dust, meaning he will be in confusion. That's why he under strong delusion today, you see? It says, some of them he has blessed and exalted, and some of them he sanctified and set near himself. But some of them has he cursed and brought low and turned out of their places. As the clay is in the potter's hand to fashion it at his pleasure, so man is in the hand of him that made him to render to them as liketh him best. Good is set against evil, life against death. So is the godly against the sinner, and the sinner against the godly. So look upon all the works of the Most High, and there are two and two, one against another. You see? It's plain and simple. So the Lord is a perfect balance, man. And the Lord loves his people, and he hates Esau. Okay? So let's finish that up. Uh, it says, an Edomite would also want to infiltrate churches and seminaries to get Yahweh's people to believe that there is no God of hate, only a God of love and mercy. The Jews have done just that in Christendom, okay? The Edomite Jews of today are the main ones who are concerned about hate, and with good reason. They are desperately trying to suppress all hate, even any acts or words that could be construed as causing mental anguish, in response to their role as being the people against whom the Lord has indignation forever. The Jews have made the concept of hate a taboo. Okay, the Jew Eli Weasel stated on public television that even hate of hate is dangerous. This is an example of how paranoid the Edomite Jews are regarding Yahweh's hatred of them, and the lengths they will go to eliminate from the minds of Yahweh's people any aspect of the idea of hate. You see? So there's no way, all right, that you could run around it, okay? The Lord is always going to expose through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai who these devils are, all right? So that video that you just seen was another tactic by this damn devil to make you believe that now they're Israelites. They ain't Israelites, man, okay? Now, did they descend from Shem? Absolutely, okay? But they are the biblical Edomites, okay? They're not Caucasians. They're not Caucasoids, okay? They did not come from the Caucasus Mountains, all right? They came from Mount Seir. That is their original birthplace and will always be their birthplace, all right? If we had to send their asses back to where they came from, that's exactly where they would be, you see? And again, there's no other way to look at them, all right? All this, there were Greeks, there were Romans, there were white people. All that shit is bullshit, okay? That's just another way for them to hide themselves from you knowing who they are, all right? But the true men of the Lord going to always expose and know who these devils are to the end, all right? So Lord willing that the lesson was edifying. So with that being said, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai, Kol Haloyim La Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachachodash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who rule well. Blessings and salutations to the hopeful elect, the scattered abroad, the Akim and the Aquat that was listening in. Yahweh Ratazah, Lord willing that the lesson was edifying. To the next one, Shalom. Keep fighting the good fight of faith. Enduring as good soldiers of Yahweh Shai. You sisters continue to learn in silence, watching the true men of the Lord. Always, keeping yourself working and abiding in the love of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, all right, which is this labor, all right. So with that being said, Shalom, Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, Barakatah.